is the second module of our workshop on cultivating an innovation mindset, which is part of the Value Shift series that we organize as part of the FACS community program of events. I will leave the recap of the last session to Ben, who will do it shortly. But today, basically, we will continue the learning journey, and we will focus on some practical tools for mindset shifts, building on module 1. And we will have one more module, the last one, next week on Tuesday, same time. And as I mentioned as well last week, for those of you who joined us, Ben will be offering some one-on-one coaching sessions. So my colleague Alejandra will drop in the chat box a sign-up form in case you would be interested to register to them. Before handing over to Ben, we will run a quick Mentimeter. Alejandra will share the instructions in the chat box, and I will share my screen. So this Mentimeter maybe will be more, so just checking with Alejandra, can you see my Menti screen?
Yeah, we can see it, Alex.
Okay, perfect. So this Mentimeter might be more tailored to colleagues who have joined us last week. For those of you who have, joined for the first time today and haven't watched the recording, maybe some of those questions will be not straightforward. So please bear with us. And to join the Menti, you have the instructions in the chat box. You can either scan the QR code or join using the dedicated website and type the code, or use directly the link. And I see we have 5 participants already who are part of the Menti. And yes, we will start with the first question. So the first question is, what is your key learning from module 1? It's an open-ended question. It can be anything. And this poll is anonymous. So, you can feel free and be comfortable to type anything that exactly you feel that was a highlight for you from module 1, one thing that you remember. And for those who have joined us last week, we were particularly focusing on the agency, adaptability, and aspirations framework. So maybe something related to it. Yeah, so we experience our model of the world, not the world itself. Yes, so the framework related to actor network theory and social constructivism. Our reaction is a perception. Anything else? Yes, perceptions that influence our thinking. One more, maybe. Yes. So the agency, adaptability, and aspirations, a plus framework related with, yeah, and its relation with the current work. Perfect. So let's go to the second question. What remained unanswered for you after module one? If you have any questions, any things that you still feel that were not clear or you're confused about. Yeah, so someone answered that all kind of made sense up to now. Great. Anything else before we close the Menti? You can keep on typing your answers if you have something, but just as I mentioned, we have quite a packed agenda. I will stop the Menti for now. And yes, I welcome again, Ben. So for those who are joining for the first time today, Ben is the founder of the Brain Innovation Project, has been working with us at UNDP and with the food system team for a couple of years now, and has been delivering different types of workshops related to agility, resilience, innovation, which are derived from neuroscience, and offering as well one-on-one coaching. So with this, over to you, Ben, and thank you all for joining us today.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Delighted to be with you. We've got a packed agenda, as Alexandra has said a few times, so let's just jump in. Just to outline where we're going today. For new people who haven't been in before, just to get clear, here's your chance to sign off and go and do something else for the next 2 hours if you need to. We're not talking about technical thematic issues or design thinking, ways of innovation. We're talking very much here about brain, nature, mindset. Okay, so we're not talking about, I don't know, integrated land management particularly, right? Just so there's no confusion here. And I won't be offended if you sign off right now. It's fine, right? I know we've all got busy schedules. So just before we get going, innovation. This man, Thomas Edison, I mean, he was he not only invented many things, but also he was in a sense he was the whole founder of modern R&D in industry. He's most famous perhaps probably for the light bulb. And he says innovation is hard work, 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. Doesn't sound like a lot of fun, huh? So again, here's your second chance to sign off if you're looking for inspiration rather than perspiration. But just look at this statue of him. he shared a winter estate with Henry Ford, and this is the statue of him. And just look at what he's holding. What is he holding in this picture? He's got a cane in his right arm, right hand, but what about his left hand? What's that? Just shout out, no need to put your hand up or anything.
Bottle opener.
A bottle opener. Huh. He does look a bit like that, yeah. But no, not quite.
There is an answer in the chat box from Charles, a cane.
A cane in his right-handed, but in his left hand, what's that? It's a little silver ball, right? And the point about Edison was not only was he a brilliant innovator, he really portrayed himself as the man of science, a man of rationality, and all of this. And it's kind of surprising that he doesn't have a light bulb or something in his hand, but he has a little silver ball. Does anybody know why? We'll come back to it later. But the point is, Edison, as well as being a great inventor, he was also an amazing publicist self. And so his idea of innovation is 1% inspiration, 99% perspiration. It's not entirely true, but we'll come back to that later. So hopefully innovation is fun and innovation mindset is fun. So don't worry. So just to reflect, for those who didn't manage to participate last week, this is the framework we're using in terms of mindset. That you've got agency, your sense of capacity to make, so your sense of self, your sense of ability to shape your world and your reactions to things. Aspirations, more the external goals in the world, what you're seeking to achieve, but also internal goals. And all of this in a sense is the adaptability is where innovation actually happens in the sense of your interaction with the world, right? And this is through learning and action. But we're not going to go into detail on this again. And this is the plus, internal state. And what we will find, and just to recap for others as well, is that all of these three things are entirely, they're entirely interconnected. They're not really independent from each other, because your sense of agency is going to help shape your goals and vice versa. So this is what we're focusing on, internal state, the plus in the framework. And if you're wondering what the hell that is, we're coming to it, and we're going to spend the next 2 hours on that. So the module 1 was looking a bit at the framework. That's last week. Number 2, module 2, the magic internal state. And number 3, module number 3, we'll be looking at the framework again, but a little bit more about how you can use it in the external world. But here we're looking about how we use it in terms of mindset. And what we'll be doing today is we're going to have, there's going to be much less talking by me than last week, you'll be glad to hear. But what we're going to be doing is we're going to be exploring about 7 to 10, it'll probably be more like 7 because we won't have the time for 10, ways of thinking which change your internal state. Okay, that's what we're going to be doing today. And we'll come to what state is in a bit. Just to remind you some key points from last week, that we don't see the world as it is, but we focus on our model of the world. We can only make sense of the world through our sensory perceptions, and we build models of the world, and that's what we're essentially working on, and that's what we see. We think we see the world itself, but it's an impossibility. We can only make sense of the world through the sensory data which comes in. And this model, it's not just of, I don't know, tennis rackets and tennis balls. It also has your sense of self, your sense of agency, your goals is all built into your model. Right? And this is what we're focusing on. And all this is not just modified, but in a sense driven by your internal state. And again, just to recap on a couple of key points, that in our models of the world, we have deep-seated beliefs and expectations, really from which everything, our values, gravity, that things can fall down rather than going up, the whole package. And these long, deep-seated beliefs are driving what we predict in terms of our immediate sensory predictions. Right? And if this doesn't make sense to people who've just joined for the first time this week, I would suggest you watch the recording from week 1, because there's more to it than this. And when your predictions meet your sensory data coming in from the world, in other words, I get up in the morning and I expect to feel great, right? Then your model, your world model, is reinforced. But when you expect to feel great and you feel awful, you've got a prediction error. Right? And remember, a key thing, the key operating principle for our brains is minimizing the uncertainty or surprise or prediction error between the model of the world and the world itself. Is this, people remember this from last week, maybe? And it's only in this prediction error that the space for change exists. Because otherwise, if we're just reinforcing our model, we're just seeing what we already believe. And there's no real space for change. It might be working and it might be great, but there's no space for change here. So how we respond to this prediction error or uncertainty, this is absolutely central if we want to innovate. And we will get to some practical exercises in a bit, but I just want to frame this a little bit more. And if anybody has any questions or comments, just jump in, right? We don't need to be formal here. Just ask as we go along. Uncertainty, but embracing uncertainty isn't always a lot of fun for people. But here's the key thing, is our brains are trying to minimize uncertainty, but how we respond to uncertainty or surprise is key. We all know this, that uncertainty, it can be something exciting, positive, curiosity, exploring the things that we don't know around the world, about the world. It can be a relaxed, energizing thing when we're in a generative state internally. Right? But when we have fear and we're worried and stressed about uncertainty, it's awful. All right? And so our internal state is absolutely central. It's not just a little or a nice to have, it's key as to how we respond to uncertainty. Right? So what we're going to be looking at, surprise, surprise, is how we can be in this kind of state, right? Where we find uncertainty as an opportunity. We're not talking about massive uncertainty in the world, although even that's where change happens, but some degree in where we can lean into uncertainty, because the degree to which we lean into uncertainty and surprise is central. So we're not just talking about positive thinking. All right, we're not saying, oh, only be happy all the time. All right, and oh yeah, everything's great. We're not talking about that. We're talking about resourceful and unresourceful. All right, where we're in a state, an internal state, which calls upon or draws the internal resources and beliefs which help us rather than the fear which hinders us, right? Because one expands options and one narrows options, right? So we're not just talking about positive and negative. This isn't just about positive thinking, right? It's resourceful and non-resourceful. But just a little bit more about state. We're always in a state. You're in a state now. Everybody's in a state. I'm in a state of I'm relatively relaxed, but I'm also a little bit energetic. Right? I'm focusing on this. And we often understand our state through feelings. In fact, feelings they have a bad name, a bad reputation, but this is how we understand our state. So you might be in an angry state or fearful, or you're sleeping, but we're always in a state. I call it, say it's something magical, but we're always in a state. And maybe just take a second to reflect on what state you're in at the moment. Are you agitated? Are you relaxed? Are you feeling resourceful or not? Are you curious? Because your state you're in will change everything as the way you view the world. And just before we get on to some exercises, 2 more slides. Basically, this is very, very, very simplistic. Well, there's many different types of state, but we're basically in there's 2 parameters. There's arousal, high or low. I mean, energetic, are you aroused or are you sleeping? And there's valence, which is just a fancy way of saying, is it pleasant, unpleasant, positive, negative in terms of your experience? Right? And so a high arousal but negative state is when you're angry, right? But a positive high arousal state might be when you're joyful. Negative, low arousal, depressed, right? Internally focused, all of this. But you can also have low arousal positive states, right? And we're always somewhere along this. It's not, it's with these things, it's not always, high, low. There's parts in the middle, right? And for action, essentially, in most situations, you're going to need to be in a higher arousal state, right? And resourceful states are generally resourceful states are positive, pleasant feeling, right? But anger is a huge motivator for action, right? And so anger can also be a resourceful state if it actually allows you to do something. So all of this is contextual, right? And the point of this exercise, or to what we're doing today, isn't to tell you what states you should be in, right? That's up to you. I'm not trying to suggest anything beyond some tools and techniques to think about how you can manage your states. Because I think that managing your states, as we'll see here, I mean, we're in this constant dance of our states, which is internally managed, right? Things we do, we drink coffee, we go dancing, people in most cultures, there's some kind of traditional hallucinogenics or whatever. I mean, people are managing their state continuously. You listen to music, right? You do this to manage your state. And you also have the external environment. You get a love letter, it's going to affect your state. You watch war on television, or even worse, experiencing it in real life in your community, it's going to affect your state. And so there's this constant dance between your state, between external and internal. But one thing I am saying, and this is what we're going to talk about, is the highest form of agency, as far as I'm aware, is actually your ability to manage your state. Right? Think about that. It's not just agency in terms of what you do, but it's about being, if you're able to control your reactions to things, that's the highest form of, this is who I am. I have agency and a degree of control over my life and my reactions. So this is not something small, right? And this is what we're going to be focusing on today. Any questions so far? Making sense? Questions, comments? Just jump in if it doesn't make sense, or any comments. Okay, I'm just going to carry on unless I hear otherwise. So let's start with the first one. Unleashing your natural genius. I mean, who doesn't want that, right? And when it comes to innovation, of course, this is the gold standard. Who remembers this from school? Do you remember these kind of things? Right? You know, like you'd see, I remember there was used to show a cannonball, and it would be a cannonball. If you did it at this velocity, at this angle, then it would go like this, and gravity and forces. Right? You remember this? Something like that? Who out of you, anybody great at maths? Anybody who could work that out? You know, so if I was throwing a tennis ball, anybody who could figure out the trajectory? Maybe with a little bit of revision, you might be able to figure this out, right? But most of us can't. And so we might end up thinking that we're not very smart, or we're not good at maths, or whatever. But there's one thing which you can do, even if you can't work out the trajectory of a tennis ball. If somebody throws a tennis ball to you, somehow, just through, I don't know how, you know how to move your hands and maybe run and gauge the wind which is affecting it, and move your hands and move your body and physically catch this through flesh and blood. Right? You know how to do this. You might not be able to calculate it through maths, but somehow just through flesh and blood, you can actually move your body and capture this. It's as if you're it's as if you're a natural born physicist, right? You've embodied it. Which is more impressive, that you can calculate it, or you can actually move flesh and blood and catch a ball? Seriously, it's a question. Which is more impressive? No answers. Neither are impressive. Well, let me say my opinion then, since you're all shy or not, or I'm not making any sense whatsoever. Being able to move flesh and blood just through thoughts and actually catch a ball is billions and billions and billions times more impressive than just being able to do the maths. Yeah, I mean, it's just on another scale. Look at robots, and you know, they can't do anything without falling over or little thing. Being able to do this is incredible. What else? But you don't really know how you do it, do you? Do you know how you move? What else can you do that you don't really know how you do? Well, you know how to take in food and turn it into energy. But do you know how you do that? Do you actually know how you do that? You use that energy to come up with thoughts. You remember for your heart to beat continuously, like millions. I don't know how many times your heart beats throughout your life, or you breathe. You can turn this energy from food into thoughts. Do you know how you do that? Every night you dream for 2 or 3 hours every night and go into this fantasy world. Do you know how you do that? My point here is that when we're thinking about innovation and who we are, a lot of it comes down to who we are. We're so focused on our intellectual mindset and our knowledge that we forget there's a whole biological living organism going on underneath the surface. And so in this case, the next hour and a half, I'm going to often refer to you as biological living organism. I don't just mean you, the identity, what your job is, what your name is, whether you've got kids or not kids, or whether you're studying or not. You're far, far, far more than this. And you can do so much more. And this is a real key basic thing about trusting yourself. And when you realize how much more you are, then it already starts putting you in a different state as you start to sense that you're more than you are. Any comments, questions, feedback, responses? Does this make sense? Or you're like, so what?
Lots of thumbs up.
It's a really important way of viewing yourself. All right. And this is, and we forget this, and we just get caught wrapped up in our thoughts and forgetting the fact that we are biological living organisms, right, of nature, made by flesh and blood. Right? Charles, you have a question or a comment, please go ahead.
Good morning, colleagues. Thank you so much, Ben. Now you're really contextualizing it. I think it now helps see that life goes beyond mathematical formulas, right? Or goes beyond certain answers to exam questions or things, right? Because imagine how you described the ball or the projectile that is thrown, and I'm trying to avoid it. I innately calculated how I needed to move to avoid being hit, right? I didn't have to get a pen and a paper to solve any
Absolutely.
complex mathematics, but I'm out of the way. So it helps understand that just by being human, you're naturally evolving, you're naturally innovating yourself. So yeah, thank you very much. That was just my reflection. I think I found that very useful. Thank you.
Well, Charles, you're spot on. And our thoughts and our cognition, really important. I'm not trying to downplay that, and our rational thinking. This is kind of in a sense what we think of as separating humans and other animals is it's our rational thinking, which is so-called rational thinking, which has allowed us to have such a devastating impact on the climate, right? And these kind of things. So I'm not saying that the rational or the mathematical or approach is unimportant. Absolutely not. This is central. All I'm trying to say is if you want to access your resources, you've got to see that you've got much more going on. And this isn't just a philosophical point of view, it's a literal physical thing. Right? And once you accept this as a living organism, it opens up all sorts of possibilities. And it also takes off some of the pressure, right? There's more to it. So if I refer to you as a biological living organism today, don't be offended, right? But it's just to say that you're much, much more than your name. Is it a kind of natural reflex action when you do this, when you catch a ball? Absolutely. But my point is, you don't have access to consciously what that even means, a reflex action, right? So that's a description, but you don't have intellectual access, right? You can't, it's something much deeper, the fact that you can even have this reflex action. Right? So the reflex action is a description, but it's not really, it doesn't really get down to the true nature of it, which is that you are a living organism. You're not just thoughts. I'm going to carry on the next thing here. So just bear this in mind, that there's a lot more to you. In fact, like there's a lot more to you than what you're aware of. Now, one of the key things in well, if not a key thing in not the key thing in innovation, is about old and the same, the new and different. And we're not saying that innovation is always necessary, but this is the key thing. Old and the same might be better, but it's definitely not innovative. Right? Innovation, by definition, it requires something new and different. Now, we talked briefly about this last week, right? About the exploitative via the explorative model or way of thinking, right? The exploitative is you're using what you already know, right? That's where your focus is, what you already know, your habits. And the explorative is what you don't know yet. Right? And so, we have words for this, like thinking inside the box and outside of the box, which actually is not a bad way of looking at it. And it might be better to exploit what you already know, but that's not innovation. And I'm not saying we should always have innovation, but an innovation mindset is basically you're always looking at what you don't know yet and what you don't do by definition, right? And the key thing is here, the key word here is curiosity. All right? Are you seeing the world as, remember, because we don't experience the world as it is, we're experiencing our model of the world, right? And if you're exploiting here, all you're doing is, well, it's great if it works, is you're exploiting your existing model. You're not exploring beyond your model, right? So this is a key thing about how we can be more explorative, right? And remember, we talked about, this, right? Generative, how we're going to be more explorative when it's a positive thing rather than a worrying thing. Because when we're worried, we tend to go inside, right? So how are we going to do this and have this as a basic philosophy? Sounds complicated, right? Has anybody come across this person, Ellen Langer? It's I highly recommend her work. She was the first female tenured psychology professor at Harvard. She's a little bit controversial, which is fine, right? And if there's one book I would recommend, it's this one, The Mindful Body by Ellen Langer. And it's a terrible title. It's an awful title because she talks about so much more than the body. It's all about expectations, openness, noticing what you don't know rather than what you do know. Right? It's and she's basically saying your life or her life is so much more full through looking for what's new and different rather than what she already knows. And if that sounds complicated, right, and a big thing to say, sorry, I'm just looking, some explorative work is also looking outside your box, looking at what others are doing and learning from it. Absolutely, yeah. So how do we look for the new and different? Remember, what we're doing here is this isn't an intellectual thing, right? We're talking about our state, our overall state of the body, right? And of our minds, our total psychological and physiological states. How do we get our state, not just our intellect, to be open to looking to new things? Sounds complicated, right? No? Actually, it's pretty damn, it's well, thinking without a box, but it's pretty damn simple. Because we remember, we're not just talking about thinking, right? We're not talking about thinking about just, can we do the maths? We're talking about our state of openness, where you feel open to the world, you feel relaxed, you feel exploratory. It's not just about okay, I'm an exploratory type of person. You need to feel it, right? The world is an exciting, open place with lots of new things. So that's where innovation will happen. So how do we look for the new and different? Well, it's actually pretty simple. I would just like you to look around your room, right, that you're in. And you've probably been in your room dozens, hundreds, thousands of times. So you know everything about it, right? Right? You've noticed everything that there is to notice about the room you're in. Just have a look gently around your room. Don't analyze it, but just notice things that you've never noticed before. Maybe the color on a picture, or a stain on a piece of furniture. And don't spend too long on one thing. Just keep on going gently around. And it's not about intellectual whether this is important. It's just about noticing something different, noticing what's new and different that you haven't noticed before. Just keep on doing that for 2 minutes, maybe. And it's not what you notice, it's the act of noticing. Okay, how does it feel? Did you notice new things? Did you? It's not about what, but did you notice there's billions of things going on? Billions. Look at the back of your hand. Look at the back of your hand. You've probably seen this thousands of times, but just notice stuff about the back of your hand you've never noticed. Maybe some line, or some little spot on your hand. The point is, of all of this, two things. First of all, when you started noticing things which you didn't know before, did anybody start feeling a bit more relaxed? Just try it again. Just in a relaxed way, just notice things. You don't analyze it, just notice things. Just try it again. Look around your room and just notice that if you really focus on noticing things, you tend just to relax more. Because you're moving outside of your model. You're moving outside of your internal model, and all of a sudden you're focusing more on the world, and you're telling your brain, move out from my internal model, focus on what's new and different in the world. And it's not an analytical thing. It doesn't matter what you're focusing on. It's the act of focusing on other things. Right, and Tigist, you say different people, different countries, the setup and the noise. Absolutely. And there's also lots of small things that we'd often don't pay attention to. The little hole in the wallpaper, or just the tiny little details. Right? And if you and who of you has ever, maybe in a colleague or a family member, you know how it is. You have a meeting with somebody, or you talk to them, and you both get into an automatic pattern of behavior, right? You know, you see somebody, I don't know, a colleague or whatever, and immediately you're like this, or you enjoy it, or you're having a meeting with somebody, and you seem to have the same meeting over and over and over again, or maybe with kids, you all behave in exactly the same kind of way. Right? And you have these roles. It's because our models are not being challenged. Our expectations are not being challenged. Right? Our brain is not looking for what's new and different in the world. It's just seeing what it already sees. And so you can do this exercise quite easily just through, before you go into a meeting where you tend to play the same roles over and over again and get the same responses. Spend 2 or 3 minutes looking for what's new and different in the world. And when you go into that meeting, your brain will automatically be out of its internal model, and it will be looking for new pieces of information. And when you get new pieces of information, then you'll bring up different models within your world. If you have a meeting with somebody and it always tends to be the same, look for things that you don't know. Maybe you're having a meeting with somebody and they've got a little bit of egg on their tie or something. Notice that. Or notice the picture behind them on the wall. Notice their hands, whatever. And your brain will automatically go into a state of curiosity about the world rather than just autopilot. Does this make any sense to people? I understand, it's fair enough. I don't want to push it, but you're generally a quiet lot, which is fine. That's not meant as in any way a negative thing. It's a very, very, very practical thing to do. Try it, right? Really try it. You'll find that if you spend this like you probably walked to your house hundreds, thousands of times, right? Spend today when you go home or go somewhere looking for what's new and different. You see people walking along the street and they're like this. Look around and you'll automatically get yourself into a state of more curiosity and more of an innovation mindset. Right? In many ways, it's that simple. Any often collapses. The challenge we identified is that innovation often collapses too quickly into defending existing models. Absolutely. This is the point. It's because what you need to do is you need to be into the important thing is to get into the state of curiosity rather than just seeing it as an intellectual thing. The state of exactly, it feels like play. Exactly. That's such a beautiful way of putting it. All right, that the world in a sense it is about play. right? It's a lovely way of putting it. I'm going to use that in future, right? It's seeing the world as a playful thing about learning. It's something exciting, right? And it doesn't, I say this one more time, it doesn't matter what you're noticing, it's the act of noticing new things. Okay? It's very practical. Try using it. So this was Ellen Langer. And again, I do recommend this. I don't have any shares in her books, but this brings together so many interesting points. She's getting a little bit older, so it's a little bit of a kind of like reflection on her life's work, which is good. But it's a great book. Blue sky thinking. Okay, the next thing. All right. Again, we're talking about states. Are people familiar with this notion of consciousness, that in our attention we have a spotlight ability, which is more narrow focused, task oriented, and then we have a broad, more strategic consciousness, awareness. People familiar with this concept? Look at the screen very narrowly. It's narrow, task oriented. Relax, look around. This is context oriented. It's a very, very, very different. This is from a physical perspective. This isn't just philosophical, this stuff. This is kind of, it's actually the way our brains are working. Okay. And guess what? The spotlight, and it's not bad, but that's generally not where the innovation happens. Right? It's the taking in the new. But remember, we talked about in module 1 about how we repurpose and we use biological mechanisms. We think we're so unique, but we've got 4 billion years of life to build on. So we actually repurpose these biological mechanisms. And this is nowhere clearer than with this. Think of a pigeon, right? If it wants to eat, it needs to do its stuff. It needs to peck. It needs to be narrow, task oriented. And if you watch a pigeon, and I have actually tried this, right? It doesn't happen every time, but most of the time. If you watch a pigeon, it goes like this, and then it stops and looks around. Why? Because it needs to be aware of context. Right? That it's not going to get eaten. It wants to do the eating. Right? And this notion of narrow v broad is built into nature, right? Into all living organisms. Right? Task oriented. If I'm writing an email, it's narrow. Right? It's task oriented. It's good. Task oriented is what enables us to achieve things. But kids are much more narrow, much broader, right, in their thinking. And it's a physical process in the brain. They've had the connections are much looser, right, and so they're expansive. Whereas adults, we learn which works and we end up narrowing our focus. So it's about, and we have a lot, and this is work built on the work of Ian McGilchrist, who's written astonishing amount about this. And actually, the left-right brain thing, this creativity idea that the left brain is more analytical and the right is more creative, it's a bit of pop science. It's not really kind of true. It's much more that the left hand of the brain tends to like process things such as sense making and language, whereas the right hand side of the brain is much more about contextual, right? Looking at the broader context. Right? And he's written astonishing amounts on this. I mean, it's really, I think, anyway, he's the person on this. And we have lots of words for this idea of the big picture, broad, strategic, expansive, and tunnel vision. And we tend to think this is the good one and this is the bad. You need both, right? And I'm not saying one is better than the other, but it's about being able to move from one to the other, between one and the other. Alison Gopnik, she's written a lot about the philosophical baby, about how babies and kids, they're looking around the world more. And there was one study done where adults and kids, they were both having to play a game. It was some video game. Unfortunately, I've lost the reference to this study, unfortunately, where they're both playing this video game, and the adults are better than the kids in this video game. But the problem is that the rules of the game are changed halfway through. All right. Guess what? It's the kids who notice it. All right. Not the adults. Because the adults are so concerned with learning how to do it, they're missing the changing context. All right. So how do we do all this? What do we do here? It's basically, remember, we talked a lot about how we're basically repurposing our biological tools. We're not as nearly as intellectual as we think. We actually repurpose our biology and just build on top. Our cognition is just building on it, repurposing existing biology, right? If you have narrow eyes, you will be focused. All right, you can imagine from biology, if there's a threat, you're going to be like this. Right, you're not going to be staring off into the distance. Whereas peripheral vision is much more relaxed eyes. Right, and so if you want to move between this more narrow and this broad, you can actually do it through your eyes. Right, and we can try this, right? So it's not just theoretical. Okay, so let's try the narrow. Pick a spot in front of you on the wall. Just pick a spot, one particular spot, a narrow spot, and just focus on it intently for 30 seconds. Don't move your head, just focus on a spot. All your concentration on that. You've become very focused and you've lost awareness of the world around you. Right? You can't have both. Right? Another way is the opposite, is stare at the spot, stare at the same spot, and don't move your head or your eyes, but just become aware of the things to the side of you. Just let your eyes relax and become aware of the things to the side of you. Yeah, so focusing, but just being aware of the things your side of you, and your eyes have to relax to see things here. And you're already putting yourself into a more broad, contextual mindset. But here's an even better way of doing it. Does anybody, are any of you near windows? Can you see the sky? What I'd ask you to do is just go to a window and just look at the sky. Don't move your head, just look right at the horizon. As far as you can, just look at the horizon. Put your eyes on the horizon, on the sky. Not at a building, but actually on the sky. Go and try it for a minute or so. Go and actually try it. Don't think about it, actually do it. And as you do that, you notice that your eyes start to relax. Right? Because your eyes are relaxed and you get into contextual thinking. Your brain is it's not narrow focused, it's much more broad. And so if you're like moving from, say, one meeting, and then you want to go into another meeting, which is a bit more strategic, I'm not kidding, stare at the sky. Stare at the sky for 2 or 3 minutes, and it will just take you away from this narrow thing and open you up to more possibilities. And also, if you do this for 2 or 3 minutes every morning for a week, you will really start to notice a difference about your awareness between your states and how they can change, and how you can actually how you can use this and leverage this. Any comments, questions? Making sense? You're like, what is all this about? Okay, we deserve a break. Okay, let's take 5 minutes, and then just let's just come back. And guess what? What I'd suggest is, during the break, rather than you going into your phones and seeing what messages you've missed or something like that, if you can do it, try staring at the sky for a few minutes. Just notice what happens. Okay, so see you in 5 minutes. At the sky. Did anybody stare at the sky, or you all looked at your phones?
I admit I stared at the sky then, at the
Ah,
very gray sky in Germany, but still a good one.
yeah. Anyway, so some Charles looked at the computer screen. You're in it, which is fine as well, but and this really shouldn't be underestimated, the importance of this, because we're spending our whole lives on Zoom. All right. And if you're spending your life on Zoom, guess what? You're not in creative mode because you're in narrow focus. Right. And so actually, those of you who are doing who organize Zoom or spend a lot of time on Zoom, be careful about the types of use of it, because you're not going to get this out of the box thinking, right? Or the strategic thing on Zoom. And also you'll see a lot of people, when they're thinking, they're on Zoom and they've got a thought and they just suddenly turn away and look away, right? And that's because they're going into exploratory mode. Right. And so just, you know, with Zoom, it's a great thing, but it's also a curse. Now, building on this theme of how we essentially we're repurposing our biological machinery. Right? We've talked about this. We've talked about this a few times. I would like to do, one of the key things about innovation is being able to see and appreciate other people's perspectives. Right? You know, what if changing perspective was also not quite as quite as much as a cognitive thing as we think, but actually is something which is a state based, as ways of hacking it through our state. I want us to do this exercise here. Oh no, not this here. Changing perspectives. Right? We think of it again. We think of changing perspectives as a intellectual thing, seeing other people's points of view, and it is, of course, right? But it's also something very physical. I would like you to imagine that you're kind of looking at this in front of you from here, right? But you know, this is a flat screen, so I can't show it in a 3-dimensional way, right? So imagine you're looking at this from here, right? And you maybe would only see a line. Yes, it's clear what I mean, right? So you're standing here and you're looking at this. I want you to notice what happens when you look at this from here, from this perspective. And now look at this from this perspective. Now look at it from this perspective. And now from this perspective. And now from this perspective. And now from this perspective. Now from this perspective. Now from this perspective. And now from this perspective. And this perspective. And this perspective. And this perspective. And now from this perspective. And this perspective. And now this perspective. And what happens when you do that? What happens? How does that make you react? It doesn't. When you looked at it from different perspectives, did it make you feel different? The perspectives change what you think about. Can you explain a little bit more what you mean by that?
Like whenever you kind of indicate from which perspective you view that, especially from the sides and the top, kind of gives you a different picture. Even when you are seeing it at the top, it kind of even seems it's a flat.
And
so what you envision even changes when the perspectives change.
And it changes also, I guess you notice it kind of changes the way you feel, huh?
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, you change the what you see, but also, you know, if you're looking at something from the bottom, sometimes something can feel quite big and heavy, or you're looking down. For me, it's important to be able to analyze these different perspectives. What can I gain? How do I capitalize on it for my work, for example? Or what is the value of generating a different perspective? Right. Absolutely. But here, what we're talking about is a state. All right. And so if you get a piece of paper and you just do this with 50 different arrows and you just try to imagine it, what you're doing is you're getting your brain to look at the world through different perspectives. And so if you do this before something creative, your brain will already be in the focus of, oh, it's looking at things in different perspective. So this thing about perspective, it's not, it's about basically opening up your brain to say there's lots of different perspectives in the world, because this is about state change. Okay, and you can use this and it will change your internal state. Does that Julianne, does that answer what you're saying? It does. Okay. Right, because so you can use this in these are very practical tools. You can actually use this and do it on your own, and you don't have to think about the issue. You can start. You can do this issue without. You don't have to think about a particular problem to do it. You just do this exercise and then think about a problem, and your brain will automatically be in this way of thinking. Right, you're using your biology. Next thing, using your internal search engine. What can I do to? Our brains, our brains are like a mine of values, opinions, beliefs, knowledge, experience. Right? And in a sense, we're always asking our brains questions. Right? And remember, with prediction errors, right? What it is saying your prediction error is going, what is this about the world that I don't already know? And I need to answer this either through learning or through action. Right? We talked about this last week. So you're always interrogating the world, right? You're always asking questions of the world. It's just another name for exploring. And using your internal search engine is the questions you ask yourself are fundamental. Now, if I ask myself, why am I bad at Spanish? Right? What are the answers that my brain is likely to come up with? You're lazy. You didn't pay attention at school. You're worried about making a fool of yourself by not saying something correctly. You're stupid. Because that's the question that I've asked my brain. Right? And so therefore my brain is coming up with those answers. So if I'm asking my brain, what can I do to become better at Spanish? I fundamentally changed the answers that my brain is going to present me with. Right? And this is a really important thing. So when you're talking to yourself, when you're seeing a problem or an issue, it's really important not to always be asking why. You know, why does my hair look bad this morning? Why is this person not nice? Why is whatever? Right? Why am I bad at Spanish? But to be asking because that's your brain will come up with those answers. But if you're asking, the questions you're asking is, what can I do to become better at Spanish? Your brain will generate a whole lot of new options. Right? Because if you ask why questions, you can often, all it will do is just make you stuck. So with innovation and a mindset of innovation, I would really suggest trying this. You're getting into the habit of asking, what can I do rather than why? Any reactions to that idea? Do you find yourself asking why questions rather than what you can do? Because also when you ask what can you do, you're putting yourself in charge. You're giving yourself agency. Right? You're already saying, this is a situation where I can act in it. It's not a fixed situation. This is something where there's a possibility of change through my actions. And the way you're framing it changes your outlook. It changes your agency. And it's such a simple thing to do. So next time you find yourself going, why am I such a whatever? All right, or why am I this? Ask yourself a question. What can I do to become something? And then it puts your action in there. Any comments? No? Okay. Moving on. No, I'm not going to get into this. The Zeigarnik effect. No, I'm not going to do that for time reasons. Okay. Giving yourself permission. Right? This is another key thing in terms of with innovation and looking at things in a different way. There's just one question. Thinking about children, asking why. Often it is more meaningful to ask what caused it. That's interesting. Right. Right. Often it's interesting. This comment about what caused it. Often it's more meaningful to ask what caused it. But cause is a complex thing, huh? Right. But absolutely. Right. And why? I'm just saying why is a very good question, but it's also a dangerous question in the sense of you're thinking that you can always get back to the root cause. And often there isn't really a root cause. There's not one reason I'm bad at Spanish, right? It's a whole mindset of things. I'm not putting myself in the driving set that I can change it. Right, brings the discussion from meaning to causal chains, which are more operational. Absolutely, absolutely. It's complex, huh? Cause. There's a lot of stuff around this. But one of the things that I would like to talk about is giving yourself permission. All right, because this is a central idea for innovation. All right. From the moment you're born, or all of us are born, we're kind of being told how to think, how to act, what's appropriate, what's not appropriate. From our parents, from our teachers at school, from our friends as kids, from our colleagues at work, our bosses, our friends, our families, religious leaders, politicians, right? We're always, and we're not just told what we should do, but we're also told through peer pressure, etc., how we should even think, how we should react to things. Right? This is it's constant. It's constant. Advertisers, politicians, and that's not always bad because this is called culture, right? Where we have shared meanings, and it means that we have kind of like ways that we can engage with each other. But there's a challenge with this, is that our expectations of ourselves in terms of innovation, new ways of doing things, are often just a reflection of what we've been told, right? And what we've internalized. And that's fine, but it's also limiting in many ways. And in English, the word can, right? It has two meanings. It means I can do this, meaning I'm able to do this. And it also has another meaning, which is I can do this, meaning I'm allowed to, I have permission to. Is that the same in your languages? Do you have a similar kind of, one word which basically is used for both meaning able to and allowed to? Many languages have this. And the two things get put together and we say, I can do this. And it's a very different meaning between I can and I'm allowed to. Right? You can, I'm meaning here permission. I'm not meaning about if you're able to. You can, you the living organism, remember, right? You the living organism, you can, you have permission to, you're allowed to have the best day of your life today. There's nobody stopping you. You don't need to ask anybody's permission. Right? It's not saying you know how to, but you are allowed to. It's about you giving yourself permission to do that. You are allowed to be a happy person, even in a world which has enormous challenges. You don't need to ask anybody's permission. Doesn't mean you know how to, and you're free not to, right? You're free to let the weight of the world crush you down. It's about freedom. You don't need to ask anybody's permission as to how you react. You're free, you the living organism, are free to learn something really important today. Not necessarily from this workshop, but in life. You are free, meaning you don't need to ask anybody's permission, to fulfill a dream or start working towards a dream or a goal that you've always had, but you've left and you've let slip. You are free to invest more time in families and friends, meaning you don't have to ask somebody's permission. You might be time poor, but you are free to do it. You are free to have more belief in your capacity for innovation. You are free to trust yourself more. You are free to recognize that you're a living biological organism with many more abilities than you're aware of. Let's say you don't like spinach as a food, or think of some food you don't like. You're free, meaning you don't have to ask anybody's permission to like it. Maybe you don't like writing or reading reports in your work, but you're free to like it. There's nobody stopping you from actually liking doing that. There's nobody stopping you from enjoying it. You're free to try new things. You're free to see the world as a more open place. Giving yourself permission is key. Giving yourself permission, because too often we confuse about giving ourselves permission for something and ability, and they're two very different things. And often the problem is not the ability. We can learn things, right? It's that we haven't given ourselves the permission. And we've already ruled out, by doing that, we already rule out the possibility that we can, hey, maybe we can learn how to do it. Because remember, again, it's our mental models, or our models, which they contain what we think we're allowed to do. And it's a construct, right? It's a construct. It's part of our models. We don't perceive the world as it is. We perceive our models of the world. And so our models of the world include what we allow ourselves to do. And if you want to innovate and you want to have an innovative mindset, giving yourself permission, right, to go beyond your current thinking is exactly, it's key, because you can't change and become more innovative and stay the same, right? If you change, you change, right? You're not the same person once you start giving yourself more permission to do stuff. And it also takes away some of the pressure. You're not saying how I can do it. You're just saying, I'm free. I'm free to have a great day today. I'm free to make that telephone call to somebody that I haven't done. You know, I've been putting off this telephone call. You're free to do it. There's nobody stopping you. So this is a key point with agency. Does this make any sense? Any comments on this? Any comments, questions? No? Make sense or not? It's fine. And it's not saying what you should or shouldn't do. You're free to have a crappy day today as well. All right? You're free to have a bad day. You're free to have a good day. Right? It's not, I'm not trying to say what you should do. All I'm trying to say is that agency, and one of the key things for innovation, is about giving yourself permission. Right? You don't need to ask anybody else's permission to how you react to something. Right? Fear and perception. Sorry, one question. Fear and perception. Sorry, just this question for, if we use the word how, will it have a different perspective? Sorry, this is from Leila before. In terms of as opposed to what can we do? What can I do to? How can I? You can play around with these questions as long as it involves some action. How can I, or what can I do? And one thing we didn't really have much time to talk about, which is a bit of a shame, maybe we'll even do it in module 3 at the beginning, is actually you don't always need to answer the questions. Just by asking this question, right, you're sending the sort of like a depth charger, you're sending it down. What can I do to, right? You might not have an immediate answer. What can I do to have a more meaningful life? Hey, guess what? It might take you 50 years to figure that one out, right? And just asking the question, even without coming up with answers, your brain will be working on it. Fear and perception of ability to act is more the blockage than need for permission. Can you explain that a little bit more?
I don't feel that I'm looking for permission or needing to give myself permission. I'm not sure. I find the permission idea difficult. I've heard people say give yourself permission to, but I don't. But
in your case, it might really not be the case, right? I'm not saying all of these things are the case.
But I do think the unpacking the difference between the ability and what the and this other, whether you feel allowed or not, I think is quite interesting. But I think it's more on the ability piece than on the
quite possibly, quite probably, right? I think for different people it's different things. Quite often though, I mean this is quite well understood, is that the perception that people have of their ability, right, actually ends up getting internalized, and I'm not going to do this because I can't do it, right?
Oh, and then there's a permission piece. Okay.
And there's a permission thing. So in a sense, it's like I am free to learn how to do this.
Yes. Well, that's what I did write that down. I thought that was interesting. You can still learn how to do it.
Yeah, you can say I'm because with the whole we talked about, I don't know if I think you weren't here.
No, I missed the first one and I've had to hop in and out, sorry.
Right. No, but it's fine. But with the aspirations, agency, and whatever, this is where the interlink is.
Yeah.
right? In the sense that your belief that you can't do it, I don't have the ability to do it, already starts saying, okay, I'm not going to aspire to do it, right? Because I don't. So they're not actually separate things. They're totally interconnected.
Yeah.
And so the perception of the ability and the permission, all it's saying is that you as a living organism, right? Not you, Suzanne, as the, with your self-image and your and your beliefs about who you are and whatever, but you, the living organism, you, everything contained within the boundaries of your skin, right? That ability to catch a ball, your beliefs, yourself, and things. You, the living organism, right, are free. In other words, there's nothing inherently stopping you.
Yeah.
All right. You are free.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Do that, right? And so this is why this point of the living organism is such an important thing. And there was another another thing. Is it also about permission to fail? Absolutely. You're free to fail. You're free to not fail, or you're free to give it your best shot. You can't control the outcomes here, right? It's about your belief. I'm free to have a strong sense of belief, of self-belief. I'm free not to. Right? It's just about basically, it's more about bringing it to yourself. I need to move on. We've got 20 minutes left. We are conditioned to not fall right from grade 1. Fail. Absolutely. Right. And that's we're conditioned not to fail. All right. And this is the problem, right? With our mindsets. And if you don't fail, I know it's an old sort of like saying, that failing is a learning opportunity. But if you think about failing as a prediction error, all right, in terms of the space between what you expected and what happens, that's the space for growth or change or innovation, right? I just need to make a quick judgment. Do I do this or not? 11:40. Sorry, I've got 11:40. How long will that take? Sorry, I need to just talk to myself just briefly, just to do this. 11:40. Could I do that in 5 minutes? 11:45. I'm not going to do an exercise which I expected to do. 41. No, I'm not. I'm just going to. We're not going to do it, but I'm going to just run through what it would have been, right? I have an exercise which I just don't have time to do about calling on your 24/7 advisors. Oh, we can combine this with the next exercise. No, we can do it. We can do it. Whoever it is, whether it's friend, enemy, whatever, right? There's always somebody in the world historically who you think knows more about something than you. And wouldn't it be great to have these on call, right? That you could ask. This is called your imagination, right? And about an exercise again, which we can't do, but we'll just tell you about, because I think some of you will get this anyway, right? Your own 24/7 advisor. We need to look a bit about the way our brains store information. If you think of a tree, a picture of a tree, on a hard disk, it's located on a physical place in time and space. In our brains, it's not. It's distributed. Our memories and our thoughts are distributed. They're not like, so your memories of this workshop will not be stored in, here. Right? It's a distributed thing. A memory is not a recall, it's a creation, right, of things. So when you see a tree, actually, even if you're not aware of it, there's all sorts of associations which are going on. Right? For some people, it's maybe green and they think of a snake or whatever, or money, or other people, they think of Christmas, right? And you're not necessarily aware of it, but there's all these different associations right, that we have when we're seeing perceptions. In other words, it's when we take in information from our external world, it's bringing up parts of our, it's bringing up aspects of our model of the world. And our model of the world include all of these things. It's not just physical, right? And so what we're seeing actually has a huge influence on the kind of associations and flow of information within our brains. And so what we were going to do on this exercise is actually, if you sit down, particularly people who have got a good imagination, if you're sitting down and you're lying down and you've got a problem, and you just start having an imaginary conversation with somebody, right, in your imagination, you will actually get quite a lot of insights. And it's not magic, it's not coming through the airwaves, it's just all of a sudden, if I'm thinking about, maybe this is a bit of a grand idea, if I'm thinking about what's the best way to spend my day today, right, I might want to ask Nelson Mandela, what do you think is the best way to spend my day today? And you trigger all sorts of ways of thinking. And for those of you who do any kind of like meditation or relaxation exercises, it's a great place to do that. But just bear this in mind. Give yourself permission to have weird imaginary conversations, right? It's happened throughout history, right? It's really quite powerful. But I want to do something else in our time. In our last thing. Your mum was right. Sleep on it. All right. We spend about a third of our lives asleep. All right. There's something going on there. It's not just resting. There's something important going on there in our biology. Right. And Japanese women are the longest living people. So she'll spend nearly 30 years of her life asleep. Think about that. And we dream up to 2 hours a night. Right? That means she will spend more than 7 years of her life dreaming, hallucinating, will forget all about it, trying things out, trying possibilities. Right? This is not nothing. This is kind of like, it's quite substantive part of your life. Now, the thing is, in our sleep, we tend to think that we have awake and asleep. But actually, the way it works in our brains is we have these sleep cycles, and we don't just fall asleep like this. Our chemistry and our brains, they have this transition between awake and asleep, and awake and falling asleep, and also waking up in the morning. Right? It's not an on-off switch. These are incredibly important times for creativity, where it's all of a sudden we're in our daily world, and then we're going into our nighttime world where we're not getting in any sensory data. And these are actually called, these two phases, this from awake to asleep is called hypnagogia, right? And from the awake to, and from asleep to awake, it's called hypnopompia. Right? These actually do have names, and they've been quite increasingly well studied. Right? And some of you might even be aware of it. You can try it tonight. Just before you fall asleep, you can be aware that stuff starts getting a bit weird. All right? Just observe it. Right? It's not actually so difficult. You don't have to think about it. Just observe it, that you'll start getting these kind of like, huh? What the hell is that? Why am I all of a sudden seeing some chariot kind of like coming, from, through the sky or something, or whatever, right? It's when your brain starts transitioning into these very, very different states. And this is where Thomas Edison stuff comes in. Right? Although he claimed that he was the man of science, and he was, I don't want to do that thing, he used to use this ball, right? And what he did was he used to, for like every afternoon, for 2 or 3 hours as he got older, he used to sit there with his balls, sit in a chair with metal plates on the floor below him, and he would think of a problem, and then he would just allow himself to start falling asleep. And then when he started to fall asleep, his hands would open and the balls would fall down, and it would smack on the metal plates and wake him up, and he would write down what he thought. All right? 2 or 3 hours every day. This man who said innovation is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. All right? That's an altered state between sleeping and awake. All right? And Salvador Dali did this thing, and there's all sorts of things which have come in dreams as the mind starts to. It's not some. I don't think some spiritual thing or whatever. I think it's just I think it's an entirely kind of like makes sense that the mind is playing on things, and actually during dreams, what it's trying to do is it's trying to refine its model of the world. All right. There's all sorts of things. A surprisingly number of scientific discoveries, right? As come in dreams, right? It's because the brain is not holding on to its mental model so much; it's allowing to go into that free flow, right? There's. I would love to tell the story of Keith Richards, but we don't have time. But anyway. He basically he was Keith Richards from Rolling Stones. He said that he used to kind of like keep a tape recorder next to his bed, right, when he was touring, just in case he woke up in the middle of the night with some inspiration. And one day he woke up in a hotel and saw that there'd been some recording on his tape recorder, and listened to it, and he heard the opening riffs of "I Can't Get No Satisfaction," do, 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 do. And then he said it was followed by like 4 or 5 hours of snoring, right? So the brain sort of like does do funny things in the night. You want to try it? We've only got a few minutes, but let's give it a go. So at least you get the principle of it. All right. And you can try this or not in your own time afterwards. I would like you just to briefly get a piece of paper and a pen. And I would like you to write down some issue or challenge that you would like to be more creative about or innovative. Just write it down. Just write down the issue. And just before we do this exercise, I'm going to say we might go on just a little bit after 12, just sort of my time. So it's supposed to finish in 9 minutes. We might go on 5 minutes longer. If anybody needs to jump off, that's fine. But I do want to just give this exercise just a little bit of time. Sorry, Alexandra. All right. So if you got this issue, I would just like you just to close your eyes and sit back and relax. And you can turn your cameras off if you want. You don't want somebody to maybe looking at you when you're sitting there with relaxed. I'd just like you to sit back. I'm actually going to turn my camera off as well, all right? Because I probably look a bit weird when I'm doing this. I would like you just to sit back and relax. Just notice your feet on the floor. And nobody needs anything from you at the moment. I just want you to bring to mind this issue that you would like to get some more insight into. Don't think about it. Just bring it to mind and let it float. And just allow yourself to feel a little bit more tired. And drift down and maybe become aware of your feet on the ground and letting your body relax. Just notice where your body is most relaxed? Is your right hand or your left hand more relaxed? And just think about that issue that you would like to get some insights on. Just bring it to mind. Is there anything new you can understand about this? Just let yourself relax more. Maybe even starting to almost feel sleepy. Relaxing even more deeper. And just allow yourself to explore this issue you're thinking about at a deeper level. What do you need to do? What do you want to do? You are free to gain new insights about that. As you drift off and you have an important memory which is related to this issue, allow that important memory to come to mind. And what does it tell you? And you, the living organism, you can gain more insight into this. So you just allow yourself to almost sleep and to gain something profound. And just think about this issue and think about the people you love and what's important to you in the world. And just allow yourself to go a little bit deeper and focus on something really important about this issue. And you can know what you need to do. And just stay there for half thinking about it, half drifting. Just allowing your brain to make sense of the issue. And now I'd like you to wake up, open your eyes, and just write down anything which came to mind. Just write down quickly anything which came to mind, any insights you got on this. Just open your eyes and write down anything which is useful. If you had any thoughts, just write them down on a piece of paper. Okay. Did anybody have any, you don't need to share them, but did anybody get any new perspectives on this, on their issue? Any insights? Charles did. This is a really, it's whether or not this worked for you, doesn't matter. It works for some. We did this really quickly, right? We did this in about 3 minutes when you probably need like 15, 20 minutes to do this, right? But it's just to give you the taste of this half asleep, half awake state is a very, very, very powerful way to think about things. All right. And that's why also in the mornings sometimes it's important not to jump out of bed straight away. Right? That 5 to 10 minutes or half an hour can be a very creative time. Right. And also thinking about stuff just before you go to bed, not in a worrying way, but in a I am free to gain insights into this issue while I dream, while I sleep. You'll be surprised that your brain it will work on it overnight. Charles, please. Charles, yeah.
Thank you so much, Ben. Really good. So it's like a question. I don't know if it's a question or a suggestion. So I think I realized you innately or subconsciously, there must be something you're thinking about for it to be quite quick, right? For you to be able to get that light bulb moment and say, "Ha, Eureka! Yes, I got this," right? Because I
Yeah.
found that there was something I've been thinking about a problem before. Yes, I had some solutions, but while I did this now, it gave me another way, not like another way, it just expanded the potential outputs for those things. So it's like I already had something in my mind, so I just built on it. I had a list of what I wanted to think of, but I said no, that would be too much. Let me just stick on what I already did already. And so yes, very very useful as folks said. Very useful indeed. Thank you.
I'm glad, and the point is, Charles, as well. Absolutely, this is exactly, and we don't have to, there's so much we could be talking about. We're doing this in 6 hours over 3 modules, where this is at least a week, right? To go into this stuff. We're doing it at a very superficial level, but this is exactly what happens with these so-called eureka moments. Is that people? It's very well demonstrated that people go inside just before they get these. Before they get these insights, right? They're outside, they go inside. So you can use this. And the really important thing is to move between what you know and relaxing, relaxing, no, and relaxing, and to move between the two things. All right. I'm sorry, this is very rushed, but this is where we are, and I guess we could have just, if there's any kind of like questions that people have or more conversation, I can stay on a few minutes afterwards if anybody has any follow-up questions and has the time. But I know for Alexandra, it's quite good to that you might have a couple of things to say beyond that. So I'm sorry it was rushed, but hopefully next week we have a bit more time. Alexandra.
Yes, so very quickly, thank you, Ben, and thank you all for joining us today. For those of you who would like to stay a couple of minutes longer, as Ben mentioned, you can do so. We've added in the chat box as well Ben's email in case anyone would like to reach out to him directly with any comments and questions, and the link to the sign-up form for the coaching sessions. And yes, hope to see you all next week, next Tuesday, for the third and last session of the workshops. Have a good rest of your day, afternoon, and see you next week. Thank you.
And thank you so much for joining. And if anybody has any comments, questions, then we can stay for a couple of minutes.
Thank you.